Thank
Hello,
you for joining Lena and Nadine's Lovecast. I'm Lena,
I'm Nadine.
and thank you for joining us. For those of you that are joining us the first time, we love to hear from you. So if you have questions or a topic that you would like for us to cover or feedback, please do post it, and we absolutely will respond. But our podcast, we just generally talk about love, dating, and relationships in a lot of hot topics that are going around right now that people are talking about, and some that need to be discussed that aren't being talked about in social media. But we are on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. Please follow us, like us, share us, and repost our podcast. That being said, we'll go ahead and get started. Today, we wanted to talk about whether women and men can be platonic friends. And this is something that, can be touchy to a lot of people. So we thought that we would talk about it.
Right. And I think adding the extra layer, can men and women be platonic friends while in relationships or marriages with other people? So um I think it just depends on the situation and depends on the friendship. So let's start out with you've known your friend that is of the opposite sex for a long time, long before you even met your significant other or your spouse. So how what does that friendship look like? Can it really be platonic? Will there be trust there? What do you think, Lena?
I can absolutely chime in on this because I'm experiencing it right now. I have a male friend that I've been friends with since high school, which is a long, long time ago. um, but we're still platonic friends. We've never dated. He's married. I'm single. We've been through a lot together, and seen each other at our worst. So the our friendship is really strong. But however, I think that when you have a friendship that where one person is married, you've been friends for a long time, and the other person's single, there absolutely needs to be boundaries
Yeah.
in place, and I think that's perfectly healthy. Like for example, I'm also friends with his wife, and actually we used to, when we both were single, we called each other best friends. But once he got married, it was more appropriate, since he is married, that his wife is his best friend, and I'm just his long-term friend. And also, his wife has my number. We talk, we're friends and everything, and get along really well. And it's been good. Now I am the type of person that um, I don't want like a married man coming to my home, and especially without his wife. So my friend, he doesn't have my address or anything like that, because I don't think it's necessary, but his wife could have it. I respect myself and I respect her. And because of my character, I think I'm pretty consistent in being honoring myself, honoring God, honoring his wife, honoring him, whether somebody's watching or not. I think that there's things that are appropriate, and that there's things that are not appropriate. So to keep things on the up and up, and so that there can't be um, any assumptions of any wrongdoing. He doesn't come over to my house. I've been over to their house, and but I'm single. He doesn't need to come, over here. So, that's my standpoint on that. But we
What about meeting out in public? Like you're meeting out with him, only him without his wife there, just for lunch or, for dinner maybe.
yeah, yeah, that I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Um, because it is in public,
Yeah.
I just don't, think it's necessary for him to be, at my home.
Right.
But yeah, we do hang out outside of the house in public places. Yeah.
Okay.
What
Okay.
about you?
Well, I do think that men and women that have had a long-term friendship prior to them getting into a marriage or in a relationship can be friends, can be platonic friends. However, I do think that the key uh, ingredient is transparency. I think that that friendship needs to be transparent to the spouse and or the significant other.
Mm.
I think that it becomes a little sketchy when it's not, it's not, things are hidden. So if you're
Yeah,
going out to meet them for lunch and your spouse doesn't know about it,
right.
um, e- especially if they're coming to your house, things of that nature may start to cause some problems. But I think that the relationship, that the friendship can sustain as long, and I think it can be appropriate, but you just have to set some boundaries, like you said,
Mhm.
like not coming to the house and also having transparency between
Mhm.
all three parties, and the fact that this person is your friend and the wife is also your friend. I think that helps a lot, as opposed to having a friendship outside of your marriage that your spouse doesn't know about. Because same sex friendships, usually, your spouse knows who your friends are, and vice versa, you know who your spouse's friends are. So if there's a friendship outside of the marriage where it's being kept kind of secret, then I think that can be alarming.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
actually, with this particular friendship that I was referring to, like when I was married, the two of them were dating, and when we would interact, and I had some exposure to her, and um, uh, enough to get to know her, and I was actually like, you should marry her. And he did. So friends can give really good insight and um perspective from the opposite sex. I think that helps to balance things um in life. But I think that um if you were to um, um, be in a situation where the friendship is hidden from the spouse, and then out of the blue, years down the line, there's this friend that your husband or your wife brings up, and they supposedly have known each other for years, and but you've never heard of them. I think that can pose some issues. So to your point earlier, Nadine, communication is really, really important in a relationship. But like if you're meeting, if you've met the person after you and your spouse have been dating, or your mate have been dating, or whatever you want to call it nowadays, and you guys develop a friendship. And I think being transparent and communicating with the person that you're actually dating, I think you're able to still form friendships with anybody, regardless of gender. But there are times when um, having a friendship with the opposite sex may not work out as well. I know that I've been in situations where, the friend that, I was forming a platonic relationship with, end up falling in love or, developing feelings. So, in those cases, it won't work.
I've had the exact same situation as well, where there was a friend and we had been platonic friends. However, revealed later on to me that he had feelings, and that he had more of an interest towards me. So that became a little bit of a situation,
Mhm.
Um, unfortunately, we are not friends. We're no longer friends because of it. So I think that it's like when two people, when a man and a woman become friends and you say you're platonic, sometimes one person isn't really platonic because they're harboring romantic feelings for the other person, but just not saying anything about it. So then, jealousy can come between the two of you, because if the other is with someone else and and they have platonic or romantic feelings for you, then that could be kind of a situation where you don't want it to sabotage your relationship or your marriage. And to your point earlier, also, Helena, even though that you had your friendship with your friend long before he was married, and you called each other's best friend, I really like it that you kind of took a step back from that and said that no, your wife is your best friend now, because he really should be confiding in his wife. And
Right.
and I think we've talked about it before, where you said that you guys are friends, but with the boundaries, it doesn't mean that you talk to him every single day either, that he knows your everyday whereabouts. That I think can form an emotional attachment or emotional connection that could be threatening to the marriage that he's in. So, what do you think?
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, and yeah, we don't talk every day. There's been times where we haven't talked for months, but then when we do communicate with each other, whether that's via text or call or whatever, we just pick up where we left off, and we're perfectly fine. But yeah, we both have our own separate lives, obviously, and he lives his, and I live mine. And we definitely don't have time to uh, talk every day, but we're still good friends, and that's okay. Now I have a question for you. So what do you do if you're in a situation where your significant other, the person that you're dating, has a problem when you do have a platonic friend of the opposite sex?
I think that what I would do is just to make sure, or just stay open, be open, talk to him about it, be transparent as possible, have him meet my friend. We can all go out to dinner or lunch together, and just try to make him as comfortable as possible. But if I'm intentional about being in my relationship and or married, obviously I'm intentional if I'm married, then my spouse's feelings come before what a friend may feel. So, and I think that if the friendship is platonic, it's not that I wouldn't end the friendship by any means, but I think that when a friendship is platonic, and like you said, when one person moves towards a relationship that becomes serious and goes into marriage, that friend naturally will kind of back up a little bit, and you'll also respect that marriage. So I don't know. I mean, I can't imagine dating someone that would have a serious problem with me having a platonic friendship with someone that I've never dated before, and that I'm open about with, that I say, oh, hey, I was talking to so and so today. And
Mhm.
and again, that word being transparent, that's what I would do. I'd do my best to be as transparent as possible. And if it's platonic, that should be quite easy to do. So
Now, what if, you've been transparent the entire time? you communicate with your significant other, and still, your significant other asks you to break off that friendship. What would you do then?
That would be difficult to do just because that means that there's a greater issue in that relationship, and it's trust. So it's I would think that it's not necessarily about that relationship, and that perhaps it's the issue is that there's some trust issues there, and at that point it's like I think we may need to go to counseling, or or just try to work through what is causing him to feel threatened by someone that I have no interest in. So I think that, and really even it wouldn't, if there's a trust issue, then, breaking off a friendship because your significant other asks you to, okay, you do that. And then what's next? Then they ask you not to go out with your girlfriends. Then they ask you not to do certain things. And then it just becomes a control. It just ends up spiraling into something even bigger. That's kind of how I see it. So
I absolutely agree with everything you said. It could be, a trust issue. It could also be something that's a lot bigger. Um, and when and what I'm referring to is sometimes you have situations where um, that person is heavily into power and control over, the person that they're with, and there's some characteristics that sometimes people that are people that are abusive have, where they want to isolate you from people that care about you, and one by one they pick them off, and pick out problems with each one of them, so that you don't have a support system. So I think there's so many things that have to be taken in consideration when you come to this conversation with your significant other, and understanding who your significant other is, and their flaws, and who they are, which, if someone has abusive tendencies and they're trying to isolate you and pick your friends and family off, one by one, I think that in any dating relationship, you have to make sure that you keep your eyes open, um, and to find out what somebody's motive really is, and if they're attacking your support system, so that you don't have a support system, and anybody to go to when there's a problem, a real problem in your personal relationship, or whatever the case is. But I would proceed with caution, when it comes to stuff like that, and take everything in consideration, to know whether you have a bigger problem that you need to be concerned with or not.
absolutely. So how do you feel about people being platonic friendships after they've dated? So they were together before, and they ended up deciding that the relationship wasn't going to work for whatever reasons, but then they continued to stay friends and moved on to someone else, but they continued to stay friends.
I think that's a tough one. I don't really think that could work. Because you did start off from a romantic in a romantic way, and pursuing each other in a romantic way. So I think that there's more likely in those types of situations going to be, where somebody catches feelings, for the other, and it may or may not be said. But I think that there's going to be more of a chance that um, it's not going to work. I think that in those type of situations, if you were to go to that person for advice, they may not give you the right advice because may have an agenda,
Yeah.
of not wanting you to be with that person so that you guys can be
Keep it together. Right.
and like the whole purpose behind of having friendships with someone of the opposite sex is other than just somebody that's a good person, but it's great to have the perspective of somebody that is the opposite sex, so that you can have a more well-rounded viewpoint on different things that as you're moving forward in your life.
Yeah, and I also think that being friends with an ex could cause issues in your current relationship
Oh
or
yeah.
marriage. Yeah, because I think that can introduce trust issues, and I think it would be appropriate if the person asked, I, I'm uncomfortable. Maybe not ask, but just let them know how you feel. Like, I'm uncomfortable with your relationship with so and so, or your friendship with so and so, because, you guys have been romantically connected before. And,
Mhm.
a lot of times, there's an emotional attachment that's still there. And it could harbor some romantic feelings,
Mhm.
unresolved feelings. And I think that could cause some issues in your current situation or your current relationship or marriage, and how that grows and how that even builds if you're still holding on to something that you should have let go of that's in your past. So
And I have a really good example, unfortunately,
okay.
of a situation not working out. I had dated someone in my early 20s. It was a really good experience. Uh, and things were great, but unfortunately we went our separate ways. Years later, in my 30s, I reconnected with this gentleman on Facebook, and we started, talking over the phone, and by that time he had moved from California to Florida, and he and his he was in a serious relationship, and she was in graduate school to become a teacher. And we were catching up one day, and I told him the state that I was living in, and he was like, "Oh, I can move there." And he started going. I was like, "Oh, oh, no, you can't." No, you can't, because you're just a serious, relationship, and I'm not in the business of, breaking up, um, people's relationships. And so, at that point, and he had also shared with me, he still had feelings, and I had to cut it off at that point, because he was in a relationship and was willing to leave that relationship and try to come, rekindle something with me, and I didn't want that.
Kudos to you, because I think that in a lot of situations, women, I think we can do better in respecting each other, respecting other women, and knowing that, they're, in a relationship with a man, and that you should back off, and respect that situation. Now, if it ends up, breaking up, and then the guy becomes available again, and that's a different story. And if you choose to become friends, and perhaps, reconnect or whatever romantically, or whatever it is, that's fine. But I think that in some situations, women, in general, and not all of it, because I would actually act in the same way. And I have had a situation like that where someone had feelings for me, but he was in a relationship. And I immediately reacted as pulling away because I didn't want to be, the cause or any, I just didn't want to get involved in that situation. And so I think that, it would be nice if more women if we were more respectful of each other.
Mhm.
I think that would, make some differences. A lot of times, when a man, especially when you're looking back at an ex, relationship or ex romance, it's or past romance, a lot of the feelings that you think you're feeling are more so nostalgia rather than these are actually real feelings, especially if you've moved on and you're with someone else. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think that it would be. So kudos to you, Helena, for saying no and cutting it off because this man was serious with someone else.
Right, right. And it's just the right thing to do.
It is the right thing to
Um,
do. It's
and
disrespectful
plus,
to
yeah,
talk to that is with someone. I think it
and
is.
my thing is, and my thought process is, there's so many single people out here that are not attached to anyone. Why would I want someone that belongs to somebody else, so to
I
speak?
agree.
I mean, no. And also, you reap what you sow.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. You absolutely do. So be careful.
Mhm. Yeah, so yeah, there's plenty of fish in the sea.
There are plenty of fish in the sea. So, just back off.
That's right. And
Go
be
quiet.
respectful and respect yourself enough to know that you don't want to be in that position. I
Right,
think
right, right.
part of loving yourself.
Part of loving yourself.
Mhm.
Yes, absolutely. So that was a good topic and a good discussion there. So we would
Yes.
like to hear from our guests, our audience. So please make sure that you comment on our videos, share them with your friends, open up a discussion with them, and we'd love to hear back from you guys as well. Don't forget to follow our pages on TikTok and on Instagram and hit that subscribe button on YouTube. And we'll be filling you in on some more hot topics.
See you next time. Thank you for joining us.